Hello and welcome to the ThreeWill podcast. This is your host, Danny Ryan. Hey, Tommy, how's it going?
It's going well.
Yeah,
Enjoying the summer.
enjoying the summer. Let me see him. Pull him up. Ooh, he's got some Clemson socks on. Are these? I haven't seen these. Have these?
When you roll them over.
Oh my goodness, my goodness. At first you think they're tacky, and then you really know they're tacky.
Kick it up a notch.
Yeah, I just got
Tack to the notch.
I don't even want to show mine off. I've got polka dots. I feel a little weird, and they're the wrong color. If you're wearing your collegiate colors, mine are black mine are red and white. So I don't know if I've got the right colors on, but those are nice. So are those new socks?
I think I had these at another podcast.
Cool.
This is my second showing.
Nice. Well done. So we're going to follow our conversation about the ThreeWill culture and our shared values, and this week we're going to talk about honesty. And of course, who else do we have representing honesty?
Mr. Kirk Lamone.
Mr. Kirk Lamone, the appropriate person. Whoever created this website, man, kudos to them. The whole idea of having someone who represents the value. I think this is really someone who does sort of represent the value. And that's Kirk. And the statement we have for that is we treat each other and our Clarence. Our clients, wake up, mouth. Our clients fairly and honestly. And I'll go ahead and read the statement. I'll get us kicked off here. And then if you want to have a couple comments, that'd be great.
Okay.
We value building long-lasting partnerships with clients in a fair and honest way that is equitable to both parties. Stephen Covey, I'm bringing up Stephen Covey again, calls these win-win relationships. We look to create engagements with clients that will create success for both parties. Being fair and honest is a big part of providing quality service to clients with high integrity. If we are to build long-lasting partnerships with our clients, we need to be explicit in our decisions and do our best to lead them down the right path. If a risk or issue becomes apparent, we will raise this with our clients and give them the opportunity to react appropriately and enable them to address the problem. Sometimes this information is difficult to share with the client, but it is key to our long-lasting partnerships. Plenty of meat on that bone.
Yeah. You can tell that when we wrote these values, we definitely are coming off a Stephen Covey high. But he's so good at articulating the importance of shared values, and this one definitely, I think, rings true, and it's one of those, again, high bars that you set, and as humans, we always fall short of the high bars. But when I look at Kirk, I just think of meetings that I'm in with Kirk and sales opportunities and just things in general. And I think I have a conscience that says you need to be honest and kind of speak as though the other person is present. But when I'm in a room with Kirk, I feel like I've got to kick it up even a higher notch.
Nice.
So I think he leads by example, and that's how you can kind of see honesty. I mean, I think honesty can be faked at first, but over time people can really see where that level of honesty is when they get in the tough times, when they get into little pinches, and how do they react when they're kind of pinned in a corner. What's that response? And I always see with Kirk is he just here take the high road, and sometimes that's a larger effort. It's more responsibility that you need to take on. But that's that statement of it creates long-lasting partnerships. We're in it for the long haul, and I think with our clients we want to create lifetime relationships, and we've seen a lot of that over the years, and it does come through honesty and that keep commitments that people know what they're dealing with. And I think we all want to get down to cut to the chase, and that is a lot easier to do with someone that is being honest with you.
With honesty, I had what you remember, my best friend in high school was Jack Swift, and he went off to West Point. And one of the things I learned about honesty at one point in time when we met up, I don't know whether during college or after college, but he taught me a part of honesty is making sure you don't do the attempt to deceive. So saying something where you're trying to deceive someone else is being dishonest.
Kind of the white lies.
The white lies. And so I remember him just describing something and him correcting himself because he felt like he was attempting to deceive. And how much that is a part of what the place where I have a struggle with this is early on in sales opportunities. And I think it's sort of like you want to spell out all the risks and you want to be upfront with everybody about all the things that could go wrong, but you want to enable someone to make a decision as well. So you have to also be able to, if I'm going to spell out all the risks, I'm going to spell out all the things that are there opportunity wise, that you should, the reasons why you should do this. Because I think when you're coming in and you're being honest, you have to represent both sides of the coin, which is, here's all the reasons why you might not want to do this, but then you have to also represent all the reasons why you should do this. And I think it's being balanced with that approach is very important. Because I know, sometimes we're a lot of us are engineers and we see all the risks in doing things.
Right.
But we also have to represent what happens if you don't do anything at all, and that is a risk in itself as well. And representing that, in a fair way and an honest way during the sales process.
Yeah, a sales process, and it even carries into the delivery.
Yeah.
Of a project where, the bigger the challenge, the more difficult it is to navigate those conversations of, the things that come up as risks and how do you effectively communicate those. And I think one of the things that we encourage and try to do a good job at is doing risk management. And so it's not just raising the risk, but you raise the risk along with, what do we think the potential likelihood of this occurring is, and how big of that impact will be. And then that allows us to kind of score the risk to give it, a sense of how important and how critical that risk is. And then as a part of that, also having a contingency plan and a mitigation plan.
Yep.
And being clear about when that risk gets triggered. And so that allows you to, I think, to be honest in a way that doesn't paralyze people, but enables them in their decision-making process. And, we do that, along the, during the sales process, we're capturing those things, and especially early on in the engagement. And we know that you've got to tease some of these things out, and you have to tease out what are the great things about what we're doing, all the features and benefits and pain points that we're addressing, but also realize that things are not perfect, and there's things that will be kind of trade-offs in that path forward. And I think if you can document those risks in a way that are not just risks but managed risks, along with what are all the benefits, then you bring everything to the table to make a good decision. Because that's what we want our clients to do, is to make a well-informed decision. And some of that is the negative side, but doing the work it takes to present the negative side in a way that they understand how they can work around it or mitigate that particular side of the equation.
So in our business that we have, where we're doing work directly for our client or having somebody else subcontract us out, and we've stayed away from the latter part. I think because of this last part here, if a risk becomes apparent, we'll raise this with our clients to give them the opportunity to react appropriately and enable them to address the problem. Boy, this has happened recently, hasn't it? Where we want to raise a risk up and allow for the client to be able to address that risk, but we might not be the person who is raising those risks to the client, and that puts us in a difficult situation, doesn't it?
It does, and I think you have kind of layers of stakeholders in an engagement, and so there's things that you want to communicate that you can't communicate tactfully, based on different conditions and different constraints. And as you are further removed from the ultimate decision maker, that becomes trickier and trickier because you have more than one kind of boss to work with. And
Yep.
so the least amount of layers there, the less work it takes to manage that. Because when you're trying to manage something that, you have someone in between that relationship, then you have to take into account their challenges, their issues, their constraints. And at the end of the day, it dilutes the message that you want to provide.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just reality. And so you have to figure out, how do you communicate that in an effective way? How do you enable your stakeholder to communicate to their stakeholder? And then sometimes, even if we're not subcontracting, we might be working with someone that is maybe one or two steps removed from really being the ultimate decision maker.
Mm-hmm.
We might be working with the project manager. Maybe we're working with the director, but there's a VP that is really caring about this and the one that's going to write the check for it. And so we've got to work with our stakeholder to present business cases, to present kind of the decisions that need to be made, and raise the things to the top that can get lost in a very complicated project.
A couple more questions. What happens if if we're in the situation where we feel like a client's not being honest or fair with us?
That's a tough question.
Sorry. You want me to give you a second to think about that? And
Well, I think you deal, and deal might not be the right word to use, but it's a relationship. And I think when we come to the table, both sides have flawed aspects of, what we bring to the table in that, building that relationship. And it might be someone that might be lacking the technical knowledge of understanding the details of what you're trying to provide. And so, that becomes a barrier. And, I think sometimes we can misread someone's honesty or fairness because we don't have a good perspective of where they're coming from. And so it's a journey of having a conversation that you're feeding back what you're seeing in a tactful way to say, okay, this is what I'm hearing. And at face value to the consultant, it might sound unfair and dishonest, but we can't get to that, and we can't really make that judgment. All we can do is work within the constraints that we're provided, give them the details and what we're willing to commit to, and let them make the decision. So we can take something that maybe is unfair, dishonest from face value, and what we end up doing is saying, okay, this is what we think is the right thing to do. And we want to hear your feedback so we can understand your side, so we're not, talking over and under each other. And then it gets to a point where you say, okay, can we come and, get on the same page? And if we can't, then we shouldn't engage with each other, because we're set up for failure. And that's where it comes down to. And is the person on the other side, dishonest or unfair? That's hard to judge. And I think it's a two-way street. I think clients can look at us and say, wow, you're charging us a lot of money for that. And that can be perceived from their viewpoint of, dishonest, unfair.
Yep.
So you have to work it out, and then you have to decide, are we enabled on both sides, and do we feel comfortable that this is the right thing to go forward with? So
very much, it sounds like you're addressing it with one of Covey's seek first to understand. Really,
right.
You have to understand the other person's position, and I think your whole concept of stating to them what you believe they just feeding back to them and listening to them,
right,
really is key to that, because once you understand their situation, you might understand their intent and have a totally different picture on everything.
Right.
Very good. I think this honesty for us, as we're looking to, as a part of our culture, you and I are very sensitive to it. I think, especially with hiring people and of thinking people who would be at ThreeWill, I think we can forgive a lot of things, and we we understand the situations with little white lies and things like that, and being able to be understanding about people in different situations. But I think honesty is one of those things. Just be honest with us, so we can deal with the situation, especially when it comes to project work. I think it's one of those that we really have to hold each other to a high standard, or we're not able to work together. And so I think that's one of those things, again, that when we're looking to hire people at ThreeWill, we've got to believe that your intent is to be honest with your teammates, with us, with the client, or else there's no way for us to build up a foundation of trust. There's no way for us to build up a relationship with an employee, or a relationship with a client. That has to be there for us to start to build trust in each other.
What I'm thinking about, I don't know, have you ever seen this show Selfridge?
No.
Okay.
What is it?
Well, for folks that have watched like Downton Abbey, it's one of those masterpiece theater
Nice.
shows. But it's the story of the shopkeeper or the owner of Selfridges in London, like a high-end department store, and I think seeing the story, basically it's a guy that has very high standards for people around him, but very low standards for himself. He dishonest with his marriage, is dishonest with a lot of things. And then when other people do things dishonestly to him, he ends up, crucifying them. And I look at it and I say, be careful not to be that person. Because I look at it, it's like, gosh, it's easy for us, sometimes to say, you have to be honest to work with us. But we have to realize, I look at it myself, introspectively, and say, you know what? It's something that I've got to understand, that I am flawed as a human being, and I've got to continue to strive for that. I have to have people around me to hold me accountable to that. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, making sure that I put more effort on myself, and then that in turn, I think, reflects on others and encourages others. So it's just this whole honesty thing. Mm-hmm. I think we're both very, we were raised in a family that saw this as an important value, and so we want to carry that forward. And then I also look at things that when I'm strained, there's things I do that I want to take the shortcut path. You want to take those white lies. So I think it's great that we talk about this value, because we have to remind ourselves of this, because at the end of the day, we're going to do things that protect ourselves. Mm-hmm. And but to kind of get there, we have to talk about it, and we have to, like you said, hire people that value that want to do the hard thing that it takes to be honest in situations, and that sometimes is it's a longer journey. It's something that it's not a get rich quick strategy. So I'm glad that we're talking about this and challenging ourselves to say, how do we continue to raise awareness of the people we see at ThreeWill that are honest, and how do we continue to get better at that as an organization?
I think a couple of ways we could do this that I see is one, saying I don't know. And because a lot of times people want to have the answer to the question and sort of make something up.
That's right.
And I think through the years, I've just learned to say, I don't know what the answer is to that question. And I don't have to have all the answers to the question. I mean, I can go research it and go do the work necessary to find the answer. But sometimes I think what's important is and it's tough in our situation where we're brought in as the experts, as for folks from delivery. Want to be competent, but you need to be able to. We need to show that they're, as leadership in the company, that it's okay to say, I don't know what the answer is to that question.
Right.
And then the other thing I think needs to happen, I probably do this more at home than I do at work, which is I express when I've messed up, when I've done something where I wasn't completely honest about a situation, or I did attempt to deceive, and I said something. So I want especially my kids to see what happens when you're in that situation, when you weren't completely honest about something, and you apologized for this. And I think when we're working, especially in whatever part of the process, sales, delivery, whatever, if there's a time in which we feel like our conscience is telling us that something's wrong here, to raise it up and say, listen, guys, I thought it was this way yesterday, but I found out it wasn't that way, and I need to correct myself here. I think when you hear somebody do that, you're like, okay, all of a sudden I'm going to give that person more leeway. I'm going to trust that person a little bit more in the future, because if they do say something and they find out it's wrong, they're going to come back and correct themselves.
Yeah. So I think the honesty has to come with vulnerability, and I think that's hard to do, especially in the professional setting. Is to admit when something that you did wasn't with the best intentions, or you weren't fair in that situation. It reminds me of, I think you sometimes start a different type of relationship when you get into those situations, and again, in a professional environment, that's harder to navigate. But I remember one situation with Eric. It was actually working with Eric when he wasn't at ThreeWill, but as a contractor at Ernst & Young, and I was the lead for the development effort. And I came in one day and really got frustrated, and I can't remember if I yelled at the team or what I did, but it was something that I didn't feel that was fair to the team. And I slept on it. The next day I came in and I apologized to the whole team, and there was something that I felt like a different connection, a different relationship that I had with Eric post that, because I think I could sense that Eric thought it was unfair in terms of how I responded to a situation where I was, quote, backed in a corner. And so I think a lot of these values, it's important to not necessarily be perfect, but to continue to be reflective on, am I really being honest? Because I think over time, these things can get diluted. These values get diluted unless we, sharpen the saw, as Covey says, towards looking at, well, what is honesty and where do we think we can get better? Because I think we can get dull, with some of these values over time, and doing what we're doing now. It's, at least for me, it's helping me recognize that, these are the same values that we have, and there's opportunity to even grow.
Great topic. Enjoy talking with you this morning, Tommy. Thanks for taking the time to do this.
I was trying to be as honest as I could.
Honestly, Tommy, this has gone a little long, so let's go ahead and let's put a bow on this. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time to listen, and leave a comment at the bottom of the blog post if you have your own stories to share about honesty, or anything you'd like to share with Tommy or myself. We keep an eye on that, and we'll definitely respond back to it if you ask a question there or anything along those lines. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye.